I was on mute. My bad. Here we go. Good. So let's start over. Just letting everyone know, I am at a weird angle. I was trying to get my camera right, but it looked like I'm looking up. But if I look like this, am I looking straight at everybody? Okay, so I just need to look like this. Okay, so again, welcome. Tonight is our kickoff for Black History Month here at Winston-Salem State University. I found the best way to bring everybody together in a way that assures an audience is to go virtual. And also it allows us to pull from different panelists and guest speakers that may not be able to make their way to Winston-Salem. So, we get to get the best of both sides. But again, welcome to our kickoff. This is the Miseducation of ... A tribute to Carter G. Woodson. As we all know, Carter G. Woodson is the father of Black History Month. He is the one that brought this to the forefront. And yes, it is the shortest month, but we will make those days expand as far as we can. Again, we're kicking it off with one of the best ways, and that's to give tribute to the man that actually made, this all come into fruition. So the way that I'll go about the beginning of this, I'm going to bring in each of our panelists, and I will end with our moderator. And after I end with our moderator, I'm going to come off and I'm going to let them go ahead and take the floor and really put on the show. And when I say put on the show, that means sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, because a lot of the discussion this evening spears from a conversation we had about 2 days ago, just kind of warming up and getting ready for this conversation. And these panelists are ready. So I hope you all are ready. Please share this link. This is on our WSSU Facebook page and also on YouTube. So if you know some others that would love to be a part of this discussion, please forward this information, and also know that you have the option to give us some commentary by dropping some comments into the comment section of YouTube and Facebook. So without further ado, let's see. Let me throw the dice. Who do I want to bring in first? I'm going to bring in my brother, Rashad. Rashad, you ready? I want to bring you on stage, but I don't see your face yet. So you know what? I'm going to hold off. I'm going to start off with the man. Oh, here he is. Okay. What's up, Rashad?
What's going on, everybody? My bad. What's going on?
No.
You want me to introduce myself, or we good?
Yes.
Okay. Rashad Little, educator, entrepreneur, business person. I'm excited about this conversation tonight. I'll leave it short, and maybe you'll get to know me as we go through the panel and everything. But what's up, everybody? Happy Black History Month to everybody out there. Shalik, thank you so much for inviting me and having me for this panel discussion tonight.
And you know what? I think it's even better that I brought you on first, mainly because you've been a part of these discussions for probably the last 3 years, right? We've been bringing this miseducation of to our viewers, right? And during these discussions, they start off kind of lighthearted, like, what does it mean to be this? And what does it mean to be that? But, let the people know it's going to warm up and it's about to get kind of deep. Yeah. I mean, how do you normally feel about these discussions?
I feel like they, one of those, front porch discussions, where you start talking about something lighthearted, and then, us, we get into, the deeper issues of our community. Because I think, the passion is always going to be there for all of, all parties involved. But I think it's incredible to have several different intelligences that you'll hear tonight from different corners of our world, of our Black diaspora. And I think, it's always going to get deep, but it's always going to be inclusive as well. So I'm just excited for the discussion.
Okay, talking about getting deep, you know who I got to bring up?
What?
I know he's ready. He's getting his camera adjusted. I'm going to bring him up. Y'all give it up for Dr. Monell. He already knew he had his thumbs up. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you something about Doc. If there's one thing he's going to do, he's going to come in with some fresh frames. You know what I'm saying? Always got the books in the back to let you know not only is he educated because he can see with these frames, but he got the books in the back. He's always ready. Just like I asked Rashad, we normally have really, really in-depth, colorful conversations. I'm going to say colorful. Colorful conversations. How do you normally feel about these discussions? I mean, we're not going to let them know exactly what we're getting into just yet, but how do you normally feel about these conversations?
Well, first and foremost, sis, Shalik, thank you for the invitation as always. As both of you know, I've been a part of these just as long, and I feel like it's an opportunity for us to, in spite of it being broadcasted, it's like we're having a barbershop talk or a porch talk, or we at the cookout, debating one thing or another, and we challenge each other to dig deeper, and not accept kind of what the narrative oftentimes is in our society, in our community, rather. And we leave, we're going to stir the pot, and we all don't think alike. That's what makes us, that's what makes this whole program modality so dope, because we don't think alike. We agree a lot on things, but we don't think alike. So we have good discussions, and the audience usually they vibe with us well. So I'm excited. I had to introduce myself. I'm Jack Monell. I am a professor here at good old State U, WSSU, Go Rams. I'm a Justice Studies professor, native New Yorker, if you haven't heard the accent. And if I let the accent go, then it's a done deal. I need that. I can't get rid of the accent, man. But Shad is my guy, Shali. We go back. So I'm excited. The moderator, Marcus, and we gonna build. We got a nice program. I'm gonna peace out, and we'll get into it in a little bit, y'all. Thank you for having me.
We ain't even started and you warming up. So we already know what's going down. So up next, I'm gonna bring up very special individual. We are members of the Black Jedi Zulu here in North Carolina. So y'all give it up for my brother. Also the new president of Black Jedi Zulu, Mr. Marquise. I was getting ready for our moderator. Excuse me, Marquise Cruz. Y'all give it up. Marquise, how you feeling? You look good.
Yeah. Appreciate it. You called me out, to show up on a camera, so I had to at least put some good clothes on. I didn't get a fresh haircut today, so I just gotta look the part in another way, be sharp. But
I always gotta rep with my Adidas, keeping it kind of cool, but you bringing the vibe.
True to yourself.
So this is your first time being a part of these conversations, and I pray that we can continue to bring you to be a part. And I'm sure the audience will learn more about you, but if you could just give a short introduction of who you are.
Well, hey, thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be a part of this panel. Well, for the invite and to be a part of the panel, because the gentleman, you got some good guys on here, so I'm honored. Again, I'm Marquise Cruz. I'm a grants manager currently at the North Carolina Pandemic Recovery Office, that's out of the state budget office, and we work with a lot of the federal money that's helping the state recover economically from the pandemic. My background is in economic development, rural economic development. I've worked at a few statewide economic development agencies and the Department of Commerce over the last 15 years. And I did some time doing some capacity building work with the organization called Rule Forward NC, where I really got to get my hand on the ground and learn, just really what folks are doing on the ground and trying to make things happen during the pandemic, which was very enlightening. But this opportunity with the state has been great because, you really get to see, you see what folks are doing with this federal money. And, when it comes to politics, dollars talk, and what the decisions people make with the dollars, that really shows what their priorities are. So I've learned a lot in this process, and I'm, just hopefully I can share it with it. But also, again, I'm current president of Black Jedi Zulu. So proud of that, building that up, getting out of the community, using hip hop as a tool to really push the message and get people in to do good stuff. But then also I'm currently the executive board representative for an organization called Groove by Groove Social Fellowship Incorporated, which we, again, try to build young Black men and do community work. So that's what I'm about. And fortunately, I actually get to work and do the same kind of work and get paid for it. So
that's what's always good. And, I'm putting it out there. When people knew about G5G, the one time we knew about G5G from back in the day was what? school days, you know. But it is so amazing, for one, for you to be my brother, so I can also learn about this organization, but to see that this is not something for play. This is not a movie. You know, Goof I Grew is something to deal with. Y'all doing some work. So I'm excited about this discussion and how you can really fuel in and talk about if there's somewhere you can fuel in and let us know when you're behind that money and really seeing how it works in our community. It makes a difference, right? So, but last but not least, before I bring in our moderator, I want to say our other panelist, Mr. Austin Greer, will not be with us this evening, but we will definitely make sure that he is a part of our next discussion. But yeah, we'll miss him, but you know, he'll catch this and he'll be able to see the discussion. I'm sure he'll have some feedback on what we're talking about just a little bit later. But up next, the man of the hour, we're going to give it up for our moderator, Mr. Marcus. What's going on?
What's going on, Black people? Happy Black History Month. Happy February 1. Happy Black Man. Thank you, Black woman, for hosting this amazing conversation. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here. My name is Marcus Bass. I currently serve as the Executive Director for Advanced Carolina. It is a 501c4 organization. We also have a C3 called the North Carolina Black Alliance. We do a lot of work with Black institutions, building Black political power. And perfect for this conversation. I'm glad to be a new kid on the block for this one, but you know what I mean? Just give me a few minutes and let me work in with the OGs and we're going to cook.
Right. That's why I had to bring the OGs in first so they can kind of, you know, let everybody know this conversation. I'm about to back out of it because I'm going to tell you something that powers me and empowers me more than anything. And that's to sit back and listen to my Black brothers, my Black men have deep discussions about what is happening and how we need to come together and make it better out here. And each of you, in one way or another, I've seen and you've helped me to grow in how I show up in this community. So, you know, letting loose and allowing, I'm not going to say allowing, but allowing this space to be the kind of space that it is. I'm excited. So I'm going to go ahead and back on up and be on the other side of this. And Marcus, I'm gonna let you go ahead and open it up, but let me go ahead and say this. I didn't want to open up and say this because I know you'll get more into it, but the discussion tonight will be about the Black vote, and also something that I truly love, and again, I'm excited to sit back and grab my popcorn and hear more about, and that's the Black man and his relevance in Black history in America today. So again, you guys sit back, relax, pass this information out, let everybody know that we're on here, and yeah, let's just get ready for it. So Marcus, it's your show.
All right, let's make it happen. First of all, thank you everybody for joining this conversation. I don't know if you're watching live or you're watching in a future tense, but each and every single minute that we're about to be with you, you're going to see something that is very unique. I think for this conversation, the discussion that we're going to have this evening, the topic for the discussion, the miseducation and the importance of the Black vote and Black man in American history, that's loaded. And we in no way are going to be able to tackle each and every single element of this conversation in the time frame that we have. But I think the way that we talked about this before we actually came on in our planning session is really to break down the understanding of the importance of the Black man in American history first, and then we can get to the political discussion. Because believe it or not, even though we are free today, freer than we were yesterday, we still have to battle with this continuation of liberation. The Emancipation Proclamation did not give us voting rights. And as a matter of fact, even though we have voting rights today, there is still a subset of us in community that don't have those voting rights. They've been ripped away. I'm talking about those individuals that are under the justice system, and we love you. Keep your head up. But for this conversation, we want to start off with the panelists, and we can go all the way around, starting with Rashad, Brother Little. What have you had to unlearn and relearn in your understanding of what it means to be a Black man in America? And that's right in line with this miseducation topic. What have you had to unlearn and relearn?
I would say I've had to relearn cultural significance to American soil, to be honest with you. And I say that because when I traveled up to DC to go to the museum when it first launched there, spending my life in education and going through education, when you go into that building and you go in the elevator for the first time and you go down to that bottom floor and kind of work your way up, it kind of take you back like, man, the experience that I got, I mean, obviously, there are things there like Harriet Tubman's Bible and all these different things that you can see and all of that. But what hit me is that, and this is before I start doing like my deep dive into like history past the 160 years that they love to talk about so much. When I started, doing that history and thinking, coming out of that, I really had to unlearn the type of Black history they wanted me to know and really open myself up to the type of Black history that could be revolutionary for myself and for the people that I interact with. But that museum really opened that for me because I was like, wow, we really have bled on this land and really have become a part of this thing that we are not a part of. We are America, like legit, you know what I'm saying? And so I had to unlearn, like, oh, maybe maybe slaves did it. No. When you go and see that museum, you're like, yo, no, we built this for free. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a, oh, maybe they did this and maybe did that. No. We built this for free. And that we have to start that discussion first and get that realization. But that may sound awkward. But again, going through 13 years or your first 13 years coming through K-12, again, it's ironic that we're talking about Carter G. Woodson and the Miseducation of the Negro, thinking about that book within itself, that he talks a lot about how K-12 education does not educate you about self at all, right? And so it's not peculiar to me, but it was at the time, but it's not peculiar to me now because that's what you call an awakening, I guess.
I need the burn button because you just dropped so much, man. I want to get into that, but I don't even want to go. I want to go straight to Dr. Jack. Come on, Dr. Jack, give us that fire. What did you have to unlearn and relearn?
So, I always hate following Shad, but I'm gonna do the best that I can. And the reality of it is, we've been conditioned culturally to learn our history in a manner that's safe and comfortable for the dominant group at the time, which was the European or the enslavers. The reality of it, and we're seeing, this is the irony. I mean, we're like, it's like Back to the Future. So now they're fighting, African American studies. Shoot, they don't even want you to learn sociology, like my discipline. Anything where an individual is going to challenge the status quo is counterproductive, intuitive to their dominance. I hate to use this. It's more of it's a frame. It's not to be insulting, but it's like they want to continue to keep us deaf, dumb, and blind, metaphorically, that is. Because and Malcolm X said it best. You pick that book up, you start learning. You don't need the degrees. I always tell my students, you don't need a degree. That's just something that society says you need for some sort of status thing. It's a blessing, it's an accomplishment, but knowledge is infinite and you can learn on your own. Read. They want to ban the books. They want to take away the information. And this revisionist history, this reimagining of the narrative has been in existence since we came over here on the ships. So now, from the 60s on, for the most part, there was a reawakening in all the movements, social movements, civil rights movements, and people became more empowered. We became more educated, and then we positioned ourselves. But the reality of it is we're back to square one. You know what I mean? And now we're fighting that fight all over again. And to Rashad's point, I always say this on Black History Month, the beginning, that is, when I post, I always say Black History Month did not begin when Lincoln freed the slaves, because you see most of these individuals who represent that other ideological kind of perspective. They're going to say, yeah, great thing, Lincoln freed the slaves, happy Black History Month. Nah, B, we were living in kingdoms prior to, when folks were still trying to figure out math and sciences. So, that's kind of my take on that. But to your point, I've been privileged. So I grew up in Brooklyn. Most of my schooling was predominantly, Black or brown, African American, and that back then Puerto Rican, probably Dominicans came a little bit after during that period. And my teachers were. So we learned a lot of that early on. But as you kind of matriculated into high school, that's where it would shift sometimes. And then I'm like, hold up, I didn't learn that before. And you know, they're teaching you to, you know, love Christopher Columbus and love all of these individuals who enslaved thousands of people and killed thousands of people. So then, you know, you get to college, and then, you know, depending on, you know, where you went to college, you would get, you know, similar kind of educational kind of focuses. And then you got to reprogram. So I always joke and say, when I get students, you know, we're at a historically Black college and university, the Winston-Salem State University, go Rams. I always say, everything you learn K through 12, when it comes down to social justice, sociological stuff, throw it out the window. Because now you're going to learn, you start, your kindergarten starts now. Because then we got to help you rethink and reprocess what we mean, what our stature is, what our status is in this society of ours. And I'll defer to Brother Marquise. I yield to the chair.
All right, round us out on this first one, Bro Cruz. Let's get it.
All right. Well, I mean, what I have to say is not as inspirational as the other two gentlemen, but, you know, I'm a functional brain person. But I mean, just thinking about what I had to unlearn as a Black man really comes from my time working in this field. You know what I'm saying? You know, growing up, you know, I'm out of Vance County, out of Henderson, and coming in the country, you go to the church, and the church is the community, and, you know, you put in your effort in the church, and you go home, and everybody's grinding and working because everybody's, you know, you got to work every day. We're not wealthy at all. But getting into this field, working in economic development and working directly with local government leaders, people who are on the ground trying to implement projects, trying to make stuff happen. And then also just, you know, my time in grad school, an MPA program at Central. I've had some really good professors who, I had one professor, one of my first semester, he pretty much threw the book away, and we just focused on what was real, because that was during the Arab Spring. And he was really trying to break us down what was really going on behind the scenes. And, you know, I had to learn, and I heard this back in the day, but I had to learn, and I work with it and I see it. You know, all politics is local. You know, the people on the ground are the ones that are really, really controlling your life. The people that are, you know what I'm saying, trying to make it happen, those are the ones who are coming up with the actual functional ideas that the people we see on TV can actually run with. You know, when you just look at TV and the news and the media, they focus on those big level items that, you know, national state folks talk about to raise money. They're not necessarily talking about the stuff that actually makes government and society functional. So when, you know, I had to relearn how to look at local government, how to look at how things are functioning on the ground, how those things are implemented, and how those decisions are made. But then at the same time, as you look at that, you learn how that is manipulated, how people get in and muck it up to be in their favor. So, you know, that was the main thing I had to learn, was not to look at, you know, not to look at the world not to look at the forest, but to really narrow down and look at the tree that I live next to and figure out a way to fertilize that and let it grow and learn lessons from my own area. And then those are the lessons, or those are the things that I can funnel back up to higher areas, because I actually know what's going on there. I got some facts behind me. And when I make a complaint, I got some facts. It's evidence-based. And then, you know, learning how to funnel that up. So that was the big thing I've learned, or had to unlearn and learn, was to, you know, stop focusing on the forest and really just pay attention to the trees in my neighborhood and try to fertilize them.
Y'all are dropping bars. We're only 5 minutes in. We ain't got to the yak yet. We ain't at Club Shay Shay, and y'all making it happen. Listen, one thing that really popped up in my mind as we were having this conversation, we all had to relearn in certain segments of our life. And in that relearning, it really established more pride in ourselves and what we come from. There is an intentionality around the education system. And there's a difference between knowledge and education. When you're educated, when you go through a K through 12 school system, they are teaching you how to be an employee. They're teaching you how to show up on time, 8 o'clock in the morning, stay throughout the day. You have 1 hour lunch break. Sometimes you have a performance exam, and ultimately, even if you aren't the best, hardest worker, we're still going to move you along in the process. That's what they teach you. That's the whole point. It's not to make you a revolutionary. It's not to make you filthy rich. It's not to make you even more proud of yourself. It's to make you a cog in a wheel in this process to help the corporation of America. That's for a whole nother panel discussion. But one thing that I think you all elevated in this kind of your personal journey and discovery is that you had to unpack some things and then really come to senses of where we've been. One thing that we've heard in the past couple of years, one quote rather, from a younger generation of people is, "I am not my ancestors. You will catch these hands." That was before they stopped teaching history. They were saying that before they were banning books. We weren't reading the books, nor is the K through 12 system going to educate us properly, even if we had the best system in the world around what we need to know as a people. What do you say, or what did you say, or what did you feel when you hear individuals make that comment? And what does that mean about what we need to do, even outside of the education system, to bring that understanding? And were our ancestors just docile? Were they sitting out there, just picking cotton, waiting to go until, Abraham Lincoln came? Tell us, Dr. Jack, how do we get to that point where we minimize our legacy of liberation to a statement like that misses the mark?
So I have a very hard time with that coined phrase, right? I mean, they done put it on shirts, they done marketed it, capitalized off of it. And I think what it tells those of us who are kind of in tune to these things is that there's been a lost, something broke. There was a break in the chain of sorts. And what you find is that for younger people today who kind of spew that, or I guess feel like they're empowered by saying that, is that they truly don't know what our ancestors endured to get to this moment. And I get that. They just truly don't know. And I see this, in the classroom. I see this in the community, like I'm heavily engaged in activism, and I talk to young people, because the one thing, despite maybe some of their misinformed opinions, or maybe some of the stuff they're not aware of, we still have to engage with them and help them, kind of refocus that and channel that energy. Because where they're well-intentioned, I just think they're misdirected and don't have an appreciation historically for what our ancestors went through. I think they focused oftentimes kind of on the Martins, like the turn, I'm not going to turn. And it wasn't even like they were so docile either.
Right.
Everybody's so gung-ho about Malcolm, but are you really Malcolm? Like, because a lot of you internet thugs really talk like you about it. But are you really ready to risk it all for the movement? And most often they're not. They aren't. So, I just feel like I've learned over the years, in my intellectual development and maturity and growth, as a man who proudly can say he's 50 now. I can't believe I said that on live air, right? I'm 50. In my neighborhood, I wouldn't have made 18, let alone 21. And even my backstory is for a whole nother session. But I feel like it's important for us to engage with the younger generation, even when they're a little bit off the mark, because at the end of the day, we need each other in order to impact the movement. So right. I would say, we have to be careful with these catchphrases, with these hashtags, and stop capitalizing off of it. I mean, like, it's no different than putting Martin or Malcolm on these flyers for some sort of club event. Like, I just think we really have sometimes veered off from the objective. The objective is to ensure that we continue to push forward and not succumb to the oppressors. And I'll yield back, brother.
Let's get one follow-up before we move away from this. And I saw you with your hand up. So I want to make sure, and I'm seeing some action in the chat. I love it. We're going to get to those questions. Shad.
So, man, listen, I'm going to start out with my own quote. Don't do the work of the oppressor by being ignorant. Okay. And I think that we do the work. We can, find ourselves in that slump doing the work of the oppressor by not being educated at all. Right. And so as we on this word education, it comes from a Latin word. The word education comes from the root word educo or educo, meaning to induce, to bring out, to draw out, and to develop from within. So when we really, kind of track back this first, 13 years of a mind, right, in education, our Black youth are in these educational environments, and a lot of times they're bored, right? Because if you've taught long enough, or if you spent time around the youth, they'll always say, "What does this have to do with me?" And because we are taught very differently, or should be approached very differently about education, see, everything to Doc's point, in ancient Africa was taught in a cyclical manner, right? That means that there was nothing separate from one another. So agriculture had to do with math, math had to do with science, science had to do with history, history had to do with politics and culture. So when a student says, "What does this have to do with me?" they're literally saying, what is this, internally in me there that's going to help me bring out my best self in this particular function. But because education is so transactional, we find that our students stop embracing that, right? Because this 4 panel of brothers right now is not seen enough in the educational space, right? Mm-hmm. And on top of that, even if we are in that space, that curriculum, is one of them things that, that if we start attacking that, you're going to start seeing what Doc is talking about. You're going to have to really stand on business for real. Because when you start messing with that intellectual mind and what they're teaching and putting into the mind, it's a wrap for you. They're gonna come at you with guns a-blazing. So what Doc is talking about is that, are you really ready for the educational warfare? Because to your point, Marcus, it really is about the battle and the struggle over the minds themselves. You see what I'm saying? That's why social media is so powerful. That's why we so misconstrued and so messed up, so on and so forth. Because we probably won't get into this tonight, but propaganda is real. Okay, right. It is real. But if you don't know the difference between marketing and propaganda, you know what I'm saying? It could get kind of crucial out there. But again, when that Black mind is so bored, it turns off into this state of like, I don't want to deal with anything. I don't want to learn anything. So it just functions on a very low level, right? And for those of y'all that follow them vibrations, they just vibrating at a very low frequency, right? But they forget when they meet a Dr. Jack, or they meet Rashad, or they meet Marcus or Marquise, that joint turn on, right? And when it turns on, it's like, so for me as an educator, my number one job is not to put things into you, it's to draw out of you what's already there, right? And in order to do that, my job as an educator is to turn on your curious mind. Because when you turn on your curious mind, your mind, when you get used to asking your mind questions, your mind seeks the answer, period. And those answers are all about you finding out the best versions of yourself while you go through your story and all of that. So I just wanted to make sure we talked about that. But that involves community. It's my last note. That involves community. So parents, if you're listening to this, you cannot take a back seat to K-12 education. Because, we got to start uncovering this. You go to work, your kids go to school, y'all meet in the middle at the end of the day. You tired, you fix dinner, so on and so forth. And then you let them just kind of play their video game. Now you got to start investing yourself in education. You got to involve yourself in lifelong learning, right? And then teach that back to your kids so that they know that education never stops. So I'll stop there.
No. For those of you that are just tuning in, you are watching the Miseducation of the Importance of the Black Vote and Black Men in America. This is hosted by the Black History Month Committee at Winston-Salem State University, as well as a host of other organizations. And it's a tribute to the man that made this all possible for this month, Carter G. Woodson. Brother Cruz, you are in the vein of a Carter G. The work that you're doing with Black Jedi, the work that, of course, you're doing in your fraternity in Groove 5 Groove. There is a lot of space there that encapsulates what Carter G was trying to get to. And the political engagement and all of that is just as important. One of the things just like we were having this other conversation around folks saying, I'm not my ancestors. A lot of our community is starting to say, I'm not political. I ain't political. Break that down for us, just like we did in this previous question. What are we saying when we say I'm not political or I don't believe in politics? What are they saying, and are they really wrong?
I think the wording is important to how you phrase that sentiment. If you care about what's going on where you live, or you care about how anything happens, you're political, because that stuff it happens. The decision is made and it's implemented through the political process. What they're really trying to say is that they're not politically biased. So they're going into it, they got an open mind. So they're looking in for special ideas. They're looking at politics as that back and forth, the divide and conquer strategy that's used by the political entities that they publicize or put on TV, that put out the propaganda. But if you care, if you just care at all, you're being political. If you want to work in the nonprofit area and not in government, you still are getting involved with the political process, because a lot of the dollars that you're going to need are coming through that process, and you need to understand how those levers work. So, my main thing with folks is you can't be apathetic with it and act like you don't care, because if you do that and not participate, you don't have a right to complain. But to participate and learn and make a vote, an election, around here might be a 3 million votes in your area, but you only have one vote. But what you can do is educate yourself, educate the people around you, and when you make your vote, you make sure that the folks around you understand. You make sure everybody knows what's going on. It's an education process and being a part of that community, because again, that divide and conquer strategy of the powers that be help, because if they isolate us and get everybody to feel, each individual to feel apathetic, and apathetic enough not to participate in their community or to join forces with other people, it's easy to pluck us off one by one. But if people care, you're willing to sacrifice to do the things that it takes to become a part of a collective. Once you become a part of that collective, you have a volley in your voice, and then your votes have a volley because you are part of a group and y'all communicate, and now you have a voting block. And with that voting block, now the people who are trying to get your vote has to listen to just more than one person, because they can blow smoke. They can just shoot a job with just one person. But when you got a group of people of diverse thought, it's easier for that group to suss out the BS compared to them just lying to one person. So and it's fine to be not politically biased, because I've worked with local governments. I've been in areas that are strong Republican areas. They care about their people. They work hard for their people. So it's not all just the party lines. It's, are you going to invest enough time to figure out if that person in that position is actually doing things favoring you or not? And that's a political process. So you can be unbiased with it, but trust me, if you care about anything that's going on around you, you're political, whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. And one thing that's always funny to me for folks that think they're not political, if we erased one line in the Constitution, one line, and we are the only group of people, Blacker people, we are the only group of people that have one line specifically in the Constitution that if it were stripped away, we would go right back to chattel slavery. They had to write a line in the Constitution just so folks could treat us equal. That's political. That's policy. Yep. We are literally living, breathing policy on American soil. Is there any follow-up, Dr. Jack, to that question in particular? Should we move forward?
I would just further add briefly in reference to kind of, the political preferences of the younger generation per se, or even nowadays, even some of the older folks are frustrated. I think the other side to Marquise's point is that there's an existing frustration with the political process today. Well, not even today. Historically, but more so today. Between AI, between misinformation, between the bombardment of images on social media, all media outlets, that people are just frustrated, younger people that is, about the political process, the equity in it, and to maybe Rashad's point previously, does it really matter to me? Like, how does it impact me? Like, some of these politicians, if you look at the younger folks, are probably old enough to be like their great grands. You know, what do they know about my plight? And I think that's the other side of the coin, and which unfortunately amplifies the apathy, right? The apathetic nature of, nah, I don't want to vote. And you're starting to see that even transcend to maybe middle-aged folks or even older folks, some of the baby boomers maybe. I'm an Xer, you know, but even, you know, some of them, you know, from my generation and prior, what you find is that, you know, people are just frustrated, man. Like, this two-party system, no one really rocks with us. They only come to our churches during election period. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on, but I just feel like, who speaks to us? Like, you know, as much as they were different, what a lot of people don't know because they don't read is that Martin and Malcolm were a lot the same. And towards the end of both of their lives, they were forming a unification. And imagine what would have occurred if they would have aligned and we would have moved forward from there, y'all.
That's how you feeling, Dr. Jack? You about to carry this energy on February 1?
Think about it, man. I mean, and then I'll shut up on this. People, Republican and you know, Republican and Democrats, you know, Republicans like to say, you know, Dr. King was Republican, blah, 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 blah. He was pacifist, blah, blah, blah. But what they fail to realize, they don't present his latter part, his latter speeches, his latter talks, where he was thinking about, yo, I need to go to get a weapon. You know, in the back of his mind, he's like, maybe Malcolm had something right. I'm tired of getting smacked up. I'm tired of the fire hoses. I'm gonna start throwing some stuff back. But they don't highlight that. And what they always admit is that everything Martin stood for is everything they're against today. I yield back.
Man. All right, Shai, give it to me.
I'll just say this. So in the political piece, to Doc's point about, you know, what frustration looks like, listen, if you're undereducated, you also have you don't have the ability to comprehend as well. Okay, you don't know what's going on. All these pieces are going on, so on and so forth. So again, going back to my point about the cyclical nature of education and how it's supposed to exist. Again, in our communities, Killer Mike had a very good program on Netflix about this, where he talked about the politics in Atlanta. And what I will just say here is that he literally just talked about getting involved, if you have kids in the school system, getting involved in the PTA, right? But then he also took, you know, he wanted to know if, you know, if he just wanted to survive simply off of Black products, how would that look in his community? So he wanted to support Black business, right? And truly support Black business. So he literally walked us through this expose of, you know, Black, you know, living, so on and so forth. And we do that on a traditional basis in our community, but being more, you know, to your point, like being more apt to, you know, kind of place those things where they are in terms of a political engagement. What do I want to see in my community from education? Who is practicing businesses that are Black and minority? How can I support that? Who are my elected officials, and where do they go? Where do they eat? Where do they participate in my community as well? And then knowing how to vote when it comes down to that time, that local voting, so on and so forth, is really key, right? Me being from High Point, we just elected our I think he is a Black mayor there in High Point. I met him several times and spoke with him about what he wants to do and all of this sort of stuff. So again, you know, just being right down the street here from Winston-Salem, I can go back and ask him, hey man, what are you doing about these communities over here? This is where I grew up, so on and so forth. And then hearing him and listening to him, right? But then the whole time I'm listening to him, because I'm in the educational sector and the business sector, I can say, all right, how can I take everything that I have to help support this brother so that, you know, this is another thing. When we get elected officials, don't put all the work on them. Hey, I'm going to tell you this, and I want you to, you know, enact this. No. This is a we thing, not an I thing, right? And it's always been a we thing. But see, when that work start popping, and we really got to be out there, right? and we really got to do the work for real. That's where the rubber meet the road, and you start separating the men from the boys, and the ladies and the women from the girls from the women in a sense, because we don't want to stretch and do collectively. It doesn't seem like we want to stretch and do more than we're asked to do, which makes us very different from, a lot of different types of generations. But again, it comes from that. Why does this relate to me? And then once you make it real to me, now I can, it mobilizes me to, move my feet and get some things done.
Yeah. I got one thing to throw on that top before you move, man. In the Black Panthers, the Black Panthers weren't a danger. They weren't seen as a threat because they were out here trying to go out and change national and state policies. They were a threat because they were on the ground helping the people in their neighborhood and communities. And the powers that be know that the people who are actually helping people on the ground are the ones who actually have the power of the people. And that's the power that they fear. So, when you say you're not political, no, don't worry about all the stuff, the national stuff, the stuff far away. Focus on your community. That's where the real power is. That's what they fear, and that's what they want to keep us away from.
And they will protect that at all costs. For those of you that don't know, maybe the young ones that are on this call, they killed Fred Hampton. Okay, they killed this man. They massacred this man right with sleep while he was sleeping in his bed, right, laying beside his then pregnant girlfriend who produced a child. They straight up showed up, massacre style, and shot through the walls and all of that, killing this man. Is that correct, Doc? You know what I'm saying? It's like, they will protect that thing to the ends of the earth. See, that's the difference between some of us and them. They gather around one topic and be like, yeah, let's all collectively do this. I don't care, if you live on 15th Street and I live on 16th Street, we can't allow this to happen, right? But with us, sometimes it just, when it comes down to, really center around, Dr. Little, who co-founded the Black Panther Party in Winston-Salem, exactly.
We got to fist up one more time for that. Hold on now. Come on now. Hey, for the
Come on, Dr. Little. Come on, man. Because telling you, dog. Hey, Dr. Little educated me as well. And he always taught me, man, listen, don't show up with a head full of stupid, dog. Like, for real, like, go ahead and read, go ahead and comprehend, so that you know how to do this intellectual jousting, right? So that what you're talking about, who you're talking about, so on and so forth. And so it's very important for us to not think that, that our issues and us doing the work for those issues are optional. No, they're mandatory and they're necessary, because, in a political agenda, see, political is a silent fight, right? They'll mess around and vote on something. They'll vote on something. You'd be like, yo, why is there a shopping mall or Publix right here, right? Where, this community center used to be. Well, it's because you didn't show up to the meeting. And they thought, hey, man, this our block. Real estate is also very powerful as well, and they'll protect that at all costs too. But I'll leave that there. You're on mute.
I said, this is good for my soul. Y'all just don't know. I haven't been to the barbershop in a while, as you see. So this is very needed. Next question. So a lot of people, when we start talking about politics, get very pessimistic, and rightly so. And one of the bigger challenges that we always see is that people have this notion that we shouldn't be politically involved. We should be focused on getting the bag. Or we shouldn't be worried about politics. You should be worried about getting as much education as possible. Now, we both know examples of some of the richest Black people in the world that have faced racism. And just recently, this year, we've seen some of the smartest Black women in the world face ridicule. Mm-hmm. So this notion that these three things are polar opposites or against each other, let's talk about that. Who wants to start this off? And why, again, these are kind of conundrums in our community. All right, hand one up first. Dr. J.
Go ahead, Doc. Hold on, Doc.
Yeah, I'll let you go, brother. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead. Please. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Please.
I don't listen. I like to see y'all shine, man. I'm just here.
Go ahead, brother.
I'm here so I don't get fined, man. So listen.
I'm here so I do get fined. I'll pay your fines. Don't worry about it.
Set the stage for us, bro.
So brother Marcus, quite simply, why can't they both coexist? Why can't they be one and the same? Why can't they be both as important? You know what I mean? So for me, that's always my argument. I'm all for the bag. We have in our generation now, meaning the younger folks, we probably have one of the most entrepreneurial demographic to date. We young, like I'm talking about like college age demographics.
Yeah.
These students, if it isn't the hair, if it isn't, marketing, technology, like these guys are incredible. I'll be looking at them like, Dad, you really have a plan. So that being said, no one is knocking that. We want them to be entrepreneurial. We want them to get that bag. Shoot, take me out to lunch. Shoot, but you still have to use that wealth to influence politics, because at the end of the day, and that's why a certain individual right now is reigning supreme in their particular party, is because he understands how to ensure business folks, church folks, I use that word very loosely, church folks get their way, because then he gets his way. Like, we got to do better in that. We have to use, the bag to influence the politics, because who we kidding? Cash rules everything around me. We all know that. So you need the bag, because Joe Politics, somebody, is not going to listen to myself or any one of you brothers, unless it's something I don't know about your tax bracket. But they listen to the bag. So yes, the bag is important. How you use the bag is whether you sustain the bag and you create generational wealth. Now I'm preaching. Because the reality of it is, people want the bag for the immediate. Once again, I put it up previously. We continuously play checkers. We want the immediate result. We want the king me, king me, king me. We don't want to play for chess, because chess is a game of strategy. It could be long term. It could, you're planning ahead. So yeah, I want the bag now, but I want to make sure when I retire, the bag is even bigger. And in doing so, the politicians who make the legislation that delves into retirements and funding and 401ks and all that jazz, you want to have influence with them. So I'll yield there, but they both can coexist. Who says they can't be one and the same? Yeah, Sean.
All right, so I'm gonna pick up right there. So the fact that if you're listening to this call right now, and the fact that you might think that they're not one and the same is a very European thought. I keep telling you that. So African, Afrocentrism, like they literally thought of everything fitting and molding together, right? So to your point, Marcus, to your point, Doc, it literally does coexist, and people have done it. So I want to usher in this name right here. For those of y'all that don't know who this person is, go ahead and look him up after this. And it's a great story of how he used his influence matched with his money to defeat, quote unquote, the man, Mr. Byron Allen. If y'all have not paid attention to what my man is out there doing, he literally won a case against the United States of America for being underrepresented on a cable network. This man also owns the Weather Channel as well. Okay. So when we're talking about, what Doc is talking about is taking that money and using it as a political tool, right? Not just for the immediacy. The first part, the first level is the checkers piece, but the chess is this right here. When you learn how to make money work harder for you, then you're working for it. See, when you remove yourself from the process and it's automatically running, and now you get to focus and see everything else. See, the powerful thing about Warren Buffett is not the fact that he got all this money, this, that, and the third. He has the ability to read for 8 hours a day. 8 hours a day for 5 days a week or 7 days a week. My man can just go out there and just study Coca-Cola's history from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago.
Talk that talk, Sean.
So when you learn that when money replaces your time spent that you would regularly use to work, right? When you learn that, now you're getting into chess, what Doc is talking about, where you're literally taking money and literally setting up business or so on and so forth. And I'll say this, and then I'll yield. Hey, the only form there are two forms or a couple of forms of business, and you don't always have to start from the bottom with business. There's this thing called business acquisition, where you're already taking over business entities that are already operating. You're literally just inserting your capital into those things, right? So start learning how to do business, because also too, when we're talking about money, the tax breaks go to the man that has business and land. Okay, I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna chill.
Well, hey, I'll throw one thing on top of that. Just think about old money and new money. You see new money, you feel old money.
I'm just letting that thing marinate a little bit. I need to look. We need the quotes and the captions at the bottom. I don't think y'all realize what we're going through right now. And I want to just note that it took us only 28 minutes to make it to Africa. We in Africa already. So really appreciate all the different viewpoints in that part of the conversation. And again, I want to make sure people are dropping questions in the chat. We have not forgot you. We're going to show love to the chat as we get through this part of the conversation. Then we'll jump to the questions in the chat. 100 years, right? I know you mentioned that they only tell us about 160. And I'll say this too. When you think about chattel slavery, even though we were here before chattel slavery, we're talking about 364, 65 years of chattel slavery. We have only been on the other side of that process and not even completely free. We're just free on paper-ish. Only about 150 some odd years. So to see the leaps and bounds that we have made as a people politically in that time frame is incredible. And I think it's tragic when you think about how long it took us to get from representation to a real kind of political standard and then back again. We kind of go back and forth from that. We could talk about that later. But what have we learned in this first 100 years? And mostly this first 100 years has been led by Black men in political leadership. Almost a Black political surrogacy if you count the establishment, the party that thinks they have your best interests at heart. And then you got Black men running the system, running for office up until this moment where one Black woman finally gets the vice presidency and everybody goes crazy like, you know, we're about to lose something in regards to what we've gained. But what do we take into the next 100 years of political engagement and what do we leave behind in that process? I want to start with Brother Cruz.
I think the thing that comes up for me, lesson learned over 100 years is, yes, we can be included because, you know, it's mandated for us to be included, but it's not a set and forget kind of thing. Just because we're included in the conversation doesn't mean that, you know, our voice is going to be heard. So I think for the next 100 years, again, we got to continue to build up our power in a way that's going to be sustainable, but also backed by facts, honestly. The days, I mean, and I've seen this in state government, you know, especially as, you know, the General Assembly and politics shifted in North Carolina. You know, the days of having good stories and people funding you off of the good ideas and good stories is gone. When people don't necessarily want to give you what you think you deserve, they want more quantitative stories. So we have to educate ourselves. We have to present more solid cases on the things that matter to us. But that takes investment, that takes education, but also that takes time. It takes us to invest the time to really investigate and look at what are those key factors of the issues that we care about and bundle them together and then push them forward through the political process. As the gentleman mentioned earlier, you know, you got to lubricate that process. You know, you got to make sure you get people that you trust in office. That means you got to find people, identify them, support them, fund their campaigns, fund campaigns of people who might be allies to you, push those ideas. And then once you build the power in the proper way, then you can really get people to actually need to make you happy, to make, you know, to get what they want. But right now where we are, I mean, we're at a position of where they appease us a little bit, and that's been working for them. So we got to really get into a point.
You mean they give us a PPP loan and we good? We want them? Okay, my bad. I'm sorry.
Or they, you know, they give some. Yeah, they'll have those token people. They'll let one or two people succeed very well, and make it look like, oh, it's attainable, but it's really not. But we really got to get to a point of just not glorifying the few that make it, but really make sure that we as a people push to make sure all the institutions that are in place are actually functioning to develop generations of people, not just one line of folks. Can't have this as a, ancestral kind of thing, a couple of successful Black families. We got to make sure that our communities can grow together, rather than just having a few successful folks and the rest of us wishing that we could be those 1 or 2 people one day.
You mean if I cut my hair and I learn how to play golf, I'm still not going to be the next Sam Walton?
Facts.
Oh, dang.
Well, look, I'm gonna say this too. So money is not our issue. We got money. We have a confidence, trust, and ego issue in our community. We got to separate from this thought process right here. One, we got to separate from the suffer Olympics, especially when it come down to gender, right? Oh, I suffered more than you. I suffered. Listen, from afar, they want y'all to be arguing anyway. Anything to keep us apart is the goal, okay? Anything. So if it's politics, if it's religion, if it's education, whatever, so on and so forth, we don't want y'all to be together, period. So we got to leave that mindset that we don't have it. Is that no, we have it. We're part of an economy where we spend $1 trillion a year. Okay. That's real numbers every single year in consumerism. Okay. So in the next 100 years, we really need to learn that, that hard work needs to be done. But also we need to start teaching non-sexy work. See, we love to show up in that suit and tie, and we love to go in early and get that cup of coffee from Starbucks and all of that. It looks sexy. You know what ain't sexy though? Going to a community meeting after work. If you done put in 8 or 9 hours, 10 hours at the job, and then you serve as a community member to get these things built in the community, right? Or to go to a PTA meeting and write educational curriculum so that not only your students get to benefit, but the students behind them get the benefit as well, right? Those parts are not sexy, right? But we don't like to talk about those parts because those parts are not what we can glorify on social media. But again, like I told y'all, social media is not, they always showing highlight reels. They never show the real work, because you know why they can't show the real work? Because when you work it, you can't be on there talking about, no, you too busy doing the work.
Right.
You see? But I just say that Doc is probably gonna say it much more elegant and much more credit worthy than I am. So I'm gonna just give it to him.
No, I think both of you covered it well. There's no, I think I posted it in the chat. We probably the last 20 years, we kind of went, from the millions to the billions, and now we're at $1 trillion as far as our consumerism and buying power, our economic prowess, so to speak. And that is economic. That is, $1 trillion. Think about what that money could truly do in any one of our communities or businesses. You could almost self-sustain, but we don't do that. My only spiel in reference to this is we make ask any other ethnic group, they will tell you, Black folks' dollar, they love it. They show a little gold, they show a little shine, and we will go broke to make sure that we got it. Now, there's some psychological rationale behind that, clearly. But imagine if we just, instead, and we've all been through it. We always say, I'm gonna support a Black business. It's Black History Month, so everybody's extra, spicy with it. We're gonna support Black businesses. But then, maybe, you order a product and it takes a while to get to you, and you're already complaining, and you're bashing the business, or you go to a restaurant Black owned, and maybe, it isn't that. It's like we're still behind the curve in a lot of things. And, we don't grant ourselves grace and mercy a lot with that, because we just want things now. And other companies have hundreds of years of a head time, of a lead. So they've got through the kinks. They've logistically they've worked that out. So I just feel like, man, what would $1 trillion do? I mean, it would be amazing, right? Because then that trillion would ultimately be 2 and 3 and 10 and 20, and we would be self-sustaining. So I yield back, but that's my issue. Like, invest in us, build up our communities. For those of you, because the PWIs do well with it. Our HBCU fam, invest in your school. I don't care if you give $1 or 100. Give something, because you can't complain about what you don't like if you don't give. And even if you give, you still can be critical. But I'm about solutions. So if you're going to be critical, give the solution. Just don't be hashtagging your school sucks because. Let me hear your solution, being that you're so wise and you know it all. Let me hear
right.
That. So, and I yield back.
Let me say this as well, for those that are listening. I want y'all to hear me and hear me well. When it comes to that spending as well, this is the one thing that that the dominant culture knows. The people in our culture that will build you up and tear you down is that Black woman in that spending. Okay, because they spend together, right? When we tap into our culture and understand that we need to start providing our sisters, because they got the power. I'm gonna tell you that now. In that consumer focus, they know that. So if you provide a product for our women that they know that they know that they like, they're gonna spend that money, right? Also, too, when you need to start looking at the industries that we spend money in, the alcohol industry, right? All these different industries that are affinity groups, right? So again, for my investors out there, and you're thinking about really, circling the wagons and getting Black people to invest in a certain area, just follow the money.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do, right? Where we like to spend our money, create or invest in those areas so that money comes back. And then again, training that money to work harder for you than you're working for it, and then show how that can make a difference in our community. But yeah, our sisters can build up and tear down a business because of their spending and how strong it is. I mean that in a very positive manner. They'll put their money together quick to support something. And I think that is a very powerful thing. And if we follow them, that DNA of how they spend and the DNA of how strong they are in terms of like that, and then remove that ego, I think we can get some places.
Yeah. One thing I learned in philanthropy, two things. One is, show me your budget and I'll show you your priorities, because you're going to put your money where your values are. And as a people, it ain't necessarily in the right places. But at the same time, as we've been building on part of this conversation, if we as a people are saying certain things are important to us and we want the powers to be to use the levers of government and the power of government to address them, what kind of skin do we have in the game? What are we investing into those? What are we investing into those areas? And if we can show that we're willing to invest our own skin into those areas, that will push them to it. Because again, we're showing them what our budget is, and that's going to show what our priorities are. And it's easy for them to kind of deflect because of what they see, what we invest in.
And if I could just round out this part of the conversation by really grounding us in understanding the difference between rich and wealthy. A lot of us are on this train thinking that you are headed towards wealthy. There's a difference between a small business and a multi-million-dollar Fortune 500 corporation. A lot of people get in their feelings and they feel like we are messing with their money when they talk about this wealth conversation. Wealthy people, rich people get their name on a building at Winston-Salem State University for contributing $10,000. Wealthy people build an institution where they know their generations are going to get in for free. You know what I mean? Rich people got 10 cars and buying 10 houses and buying up the block. Wealthy people own the courthouse. They lease the land that the city sits on a 100-year lease. So, and I'm not knocking us that are trying to accumulate wealth or accumulate money, but recognize the game that you're seeing is not the game that we are playing. There are individuals that own literal colors. There are individuals, there are 10 wealthiest families that run the majority of corporations across this country. There is no way in the world that we can amass that type of wealth, nor do we want to go through the links of what they had to go through. You know, imagine how many people you have to cheat to make $1 billion, to make $1 trillion. Imagine how many people under you are getting paid the bare minimum. So I want to make sure that we understand contextually the difference between, we're not telling you don't get money, you know, don't create for your family the wealth, but we want you to know the difference between the person that is, you know, trying to make it or trying to make it with a product or selling something, and the person that owns the company that provides the patents. And it's just two different games in particular. All right, so now listen, I think we have about 30 minutes or so I want to get through some rapid fire real quick. I'm going to ask one question. I'm going to give it to one person to answer, and then one follow-up, and then we'll go to the next question. All right, so this question, I want to take it, whoever wants to take it, and then we'll have one follow-up. Haitian Revolution, the emancipation of chattel slaves, the Civil Rights Movement, voting rights, the movement for Black Lives or Black Lives Matter. What is the next evolution or revolution for Black political power?
Well, all right, I'll jump on. Doc, Doc, you were going for it? Well, in thinking about that, I mean, honestly, I'm gonna just be consistent with what I've been saying. I would hope that the next evolution of Black political power would be for Black people to really focus on what's going on in their neighborhoods, really in a concerted effort to focus in on putting in the work in your local areas, joining those local boards, commissions, and then using that to build power. And like I said, like they did back in the 60s. But I really will hope that would be the next evolution of us Black men and Black women really not focusing on those hot button issues that are used to be divisive, but for us to spend our time focusing on what's going on in our neighborhoods and teaching our children that, you know, what's going on in your neighborhoods matters, and for them to actually, you know, build that passion for, you know, really putting in the effort of making every day a better place for your neighbor, because your neighbor is going to make your life a better place.
Got it.
And I just want to say real quick to his point, listen, our elders have left the gems for us to pick up. And so if you guys are in the chat, I just said, listen, download this book. If you want to know what you should do and what we all need to do next, download this book by Dr. Claude Anderson called Black Power, White Wealth. It literally is an instructional guide for all of us. That's where it is. That's where the power of it is. There it is right there. Dr. Claude Anderson, Black Power, White Wealth. Go ahead, Doc.
You know, I would just say that once again, and Marquise kind of alluded to it, you know, the next revolution, quite frankly, will be chaired or led by, once again, our youth. It's no different than historically our social movements in our community. The only caveat to that is that the revolution will look much differently than in years past because of technology. I think young people will use technology to our favor and use popular culture in a way that we have never seen to date. I'll give you an example. It's going to irk me to even say it, but let's just see what's happening with football right now, right? And a certain couple, and everybody's going ham about it, right? But this one individual pop star is killing it for the NFL. I mean, they are loving her. And my point is, whether it's Beyonce or Hove or some other pop star who has a following and influence, if they can use that medium in a manner to strategize, to galvanize young people, I'm confident that they'll do what they need to do, in spite of. And I know we're very critical of young people, but guess what? So were the baby boomers on us Xers, and so was us Xers to the millennials. it is what it is. But I'm confident that young people today will use the gifts that people like myself or people who work with young people, mentor young people in whatever environment, they will get it. And if not, they're going to fall. They're going to realize some harsh lessons to force them. So I leave it at that. I just feel like young people, they're the ones who understand the technology, understand this digital age we in. They're not only digitally fluent, they're digitally, they're not only digitally literate, they're digitally fluent, and they know how to use from, TikTok or whatever, Twitter or X, whatever. They just know how to use all of this. And because of it, they can galvanize. And that was no more apparent than the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, the protests that summer, when they used social media and you had people in South Africa and Europe and South America. I mean, that's incredible power. So I'm hopeful that they do that. So I yield back. Young people, digital, using popular culture to amplify their voice and push the narrative, hopefully in a constructive direction.
What's interesting, during the peak of the George Floyd protest, which, by the way, was in the midst of the pandemic. So folks in the midst of all of these sanctions, staying at home, folks had to come out and risk their lives. And it was political. A lot of people like to say young folks aren't political, but that was a political protest. We just didn't capitalize. I'm saying we as in the progressive infrastructure or the Black infrastructure politically, we didn't capitalize on that moment. We criticized that moment. As a matter of fact, in the midst of that protest, the Parkland shooting happened. And you saw hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of young white folks come out in the streets. And they were received with a lot of applause and appreciation for the right way they were protesting. And it wasn't until they actually started speaking and saying, we learned from the Black Lives Matter protesters that folks really got what was happening in the movement for Black lives. And so even though this current movement, which is still tied to the civil rights movement, still tied to emancipation, is still in that same vein, it has been legitimized time and time again by the popular political element of society, or younger element of society. The political element still is not answering those individuals. Now, regardless of people like the Parkland shooting protest, or if they like the Black Lives Matter protest, the reality is we haven't passed any new legislation on gun laws, and we haven't passed any of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act or any of the other acts that are actually going to save young people. So that takes me to this next question. More recently, the Black politic has come under intense scrutiny. For younger generations in the past who've always challenged the institution, now the young people of the day are challenging the status quo, from community policing to community and public education, all the way down to war. I would say, quite frankly, the young people have been challenging for the past year on a global level American values and this understanding of the connection between all these things and where it rests. Don't want to get too deep because I want to make sure all of y'all can make sure you get your check at the end of this month. But I think what I really want to say is, in this moment, all of these different challenges that young people are making, they're still being met with resistance. But then at the same time, we want these young people to go vote in massive number. But when the young people start expressing a political concern or a political challenge or accountability, if you will, they get stifled, they get suppressed. And it's almost like they just want young people to vote. They don't want the young politic. And so that's why a lot of young people are pessimistic about voting in general. What do we need to do to change that? What should we be doing to affirm the rising American electorate? And what does that mean for this older generation that seems to forget that it is the job of the young people to challenge the current status quo? Who would like to take this question?
I mean, I guess I'll begin. I mean, because I kind of spoke about it previously. You know, the reality of it is that we have to use our gifts in our environments to help cultivate young people. And that level of education doesn't begin solely at the collegiate level or the high school level. I think we have to build communities where we continue to inform and provide substantive, foundational understandings of economics and community engagement and things of that nature. I'm a strong proponent. I probably drove my sons crazy when they were younger. By the time they were old enough to understand, I mean, I was drilling in, Black history, the movements, this or that. They kind of resisted one way or another. Then as they got older, they began to embrace it. I just think we have to start earlier, right? Just like we were talking about the K through 12, system. We have to begin to cultivate and educate our young people. So by the time they become of age and able to influence the masses, they're prepared. Once again, I hate to beat this horse, but it's like we don't do well enough. We don't prepare our young people in a manner that we should. Rashad mentioned or alluded to the PTSA or whatever. Don't get me started in where we have, or Marquis said this too, our mixed priorities. He was referencing it with budgeting and money, but we won't go to a PTSA meeting, but we'll stand in the line and buy a pair of J's for our kid. Listen, I don't care who feels funny about that, but you got to get your priorities straight, because them J's ain't doing nothing but continuing to make Jordan wealthier and Nike wealthier. You know what I mean? But this education and you being present to counter whatever narratives any given school system is saying about our children is incredibly valuable. I'm like Martin, man. I love the kids, man. I used to be a social worker back in the days too, and I've seen the worst of what households do as far as our young people. And I've seen them in all, ethnicities and races, but I've seen the worst of it. And I just feel like we have an obligation as adults, as parents, to really guide and mentor young people. And I do feel like sometimes we do them a disservice. And then we expect them to know better. I'm like, let's just say I've come across some folks and I've realized why the kids are the way they are sometimes. And it is what it is. Listen, I'm not here to massage your ego. That ain't my job. My job is to make sure that our children don't become a statistic. They survive, they contribute to our society, and they become contributing members to their respective family. And my thing is, I don't care about your feelings, because, the reality of it is there's so many bullseyes at us. So to circle it back, we have to begin education. Education is paramount. How do we ensure that our young people are involved and prepared? We have to educate. And I don't mean in the intellectual sense. I mean in a holistic sense. We have to educate and not browbeat. We have to support and mentor. If we're going to break them down, we got to build them back up so they're prepared. And I yield back.
No, man, I'm loving this. You are live in the midst of a very critical discussion on the first day of Black History Month, and a tribute to the life and the legacy of Carter G. Woodson. Winston-Salem State University, along with several other dynamic organizations, are putting on the miseducation of the importance of the Black vote and Black man in American history. We are here with Dr. Jack Monell, with Mr. Rashad Little, with Mr. Marquise Cruz, and I am your moderator, Marcus Bass, and we're about to jump right into the chat. People have been dropping bombs, and I want to make sure we clear the air on some of these questions. So this very question is near and dear to my heart. I'm going to take it to you, Brother Cruz, to start us off. What do you gentlemen think about the Moorish philosophy about Black not being a nationality, or Black is not a nationality, and needing to disassociate ourselves from the phrase or calling ourselves Black? We'll start with you, Brother Cruz, and we'll go all the way around the horn on this one.
Yeah, well, that's a good one. I'm kind of familiar with the Moorish philosophy, and I mean, it's a lot of different philosophies. I think everybody has a right to feel or believe whichever way that they feel, whichever way that they that connects with them. But we're all, you can't get mad at somebody if they don't rock with what you're saying, if they don't understand it. I know I only got introduced to that when I was in college at Fayetteville State for a little bit. So I'm partly familiar with it, but I don't want to expound too much. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think to each his own on that one. If that's the approach that you want to take, just make sure that you educate yourself enough to understand it. And if somebody doesn't, don't get offended if they don't, but be willing to educate them on the stance that you're taking.
All right, now
give it to us. Give it to us, Rashad.
I'm trying to figure out how the best way to say this.
Just say it, man. Come on, yeah, you know, just do it, brother. Say it.
Stand on business.
So if you know your history, right, in terms of like, you know, I'll say this. It doesn't matter what religious sect and or, you know, thing that you gather around. What are the morals, principles, and values of that particular movement? And calling yourself Black in this particular, you know, United States, so on and so forth, right? Make no mistake about it. If Black gets us to come together and move under morals, principles, and values, right? I'm good with that, right? Because make no mistake about it, whether or not you want to be identified as a name, right? You've been given that name in this land, and you will be treated a certain type of way because of the way that we've been identified in this particular piece of the land. Because it's beautiful to talk about history, class, and culture as it relates to the world. But see, for a lot of us, some of us ain't left Forsyth County. See what I'm saying? And so, or North Carolina for that aspect. So I guess my concrete answer is with that Moors mentality and being called Black, so on and so forth, we could have a discussion about the inhabitants of this land and who were the original this and that and that and the third. We're in this time right now. And whatever gets us to mobilize around a name, I'm cool with that, as long as the foundation itself is situated behind morals, principles, and values. If that gets us to come together, to read more, to be educated, to understand our political philosophy, to understand our economic policy, to understand our spiritual philosophy and all of that, if it gets us to come together, I'm good with that. What I'm not good with is this competition of, oh, well, I'm Christian and you represent Islam, so we can't never come together and do anything together. No, that's dumb. Because if you know anything about your history in Africa, they represented, the continent of Africa. They had so many different types of things that they served, right? But it's ironic that they all moved under a moral, principled, and value type of lens. So we got to get rid of all of the divisive talk, right? Come as you are, right? But also understand that these are the morals, principles, and values to make it out of this land. Because to be honest with you, the world is getting browner, right? It's only in America where we're being marketed to that, our dominant society is a dominant society. But once you leave them shores, they're not the dominant society in the world. See what I'm saying? But the world is not your world. See, your world is marketed to that this is the only representation. I'm just trying to tell you that this is not the only representation. You got to expand outside of
that. Any follow-up?
So, Shaw definitely, both brothers, expanded well on it. So I will say this, and it's similar to when I'm often posed with the question about the Nation of Islam and their movement and their impact on the Black community particularly. And I always operated off the premise that whatever ideological belief you stand for or believe in, that's fine. But the reality of it is, as we're talking about a social construct, right? We talk about race now or ethnicity or color. We all know, racial identifiers is a social construct created to ensure that the dominant society at that particular time would benefit from certain liberties that have manifested, centuries later. So the reality of it is, and that's the age-old debate even about the language of identifiers, from being called the N-word post-slavery, well, even throughout slavery, post-slavery, to them being, called colored and Negro, and then, then African-American, and then the constant debate, even, if you look at social media and you hear, individuals, they identify as foundational Black folks, and, if you're not foundational Black folks, then you're not really blackity Black, whatever that means. And then, the Caribbean folks aren't black because they're from the Caribbean. They're not foundational. So I think to Rashad's full government name, to Shad's point, I just think we do a well enough job at dividing and conquering ourselves. I look at the big picture. I'm a big picture guy. If you don't want to be called black, I don't care. What's your name? What do you want me to call you? If you want to be called African American, bet. Or if you go overseas, as Marquise said, get your passport game up. I've been all over the world, man. And you go to Europe, they don't say black, they say Afro Caribbean or this and that. Every kind of area has their own kind of identifier for ultimately black folks. But black is indeed a color. We're not monolithic, man. You got people from the islands, you got people from South America, people from Mexico that are black. They just may speak Spanish or French or whatever. Does that mean they're less black than you? So I don't want to go there because you got my blood boiling now. Because it's what, if you're going to talk about the man, whatever that means, I'm speaking of metaphors, right? We do our own, we do their work for us. How about we mobilize, appreciate our differences? Because as I'm looking, I'm a little bit lighter than most guys here, and I know, we have this colorism issue, and we have, who has the good hair, who doesn't have the good, you guys remember, you know what I mean? And that is an extension of slavery and early Jim Crow, and how, that fascination with being lighter and having better hair, because that's going to get you to massa's house. And then fulfilling the whole American dream from their vantage point. Everybody's American dream isn't the same. And we all know it's not as equitable as it should be. So I say all that to say, man, I just think we got to do better with that. So I'm going to yield because I can go on. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But I just feel like we should support each other in our differences. And as long as you're working towards bettering our community, I will always support that. So whether it's the Moorish Temple of Science, if it's the Nation of Islam, they can have their belief systems, but if we're working to better in the community, stopping crime, uplifting our sisters, I'm in for it, man.
Yeah. And shout out, much respect to Noble Drew Ali. One thing that I think is very important here is what you mentioned at the end, right? Like, people want to identify with everything except black, having Indian in your hair, I got Indian in my family. Everybody, it's always got to be a qualifier. So I'm not just quite black. And I think it is very interesting what that means. Now, and pick another color. If it is attributed to us, it will be the same thing. We will call orange people. It will be a negative connotation of orange, even down to looking in the definition context of black. It is more negative connotations. And so, we understand all of that. And then we also understand how we are defined within our context. You know what I mean? In reality, I think there's a lot to be said about these conversations that continue to divide us, that don't really add to the full fulfillment of where we are right now. And again, I like how everybody said the same thing. Whatever path you are choosing to get to your liberation, get to the liberation. You know what I mean? If you're getting free through the Moorish science, get free through the Moorish science. If you listening to Geno Jennings, get free through Geno. If you listening to TD, get free through TD. But long as you are getting free, get free. I'm not going to yuck your yum. Now, what I will do is go to the next question. And I think in particular, this question, and please feel free to drop some more in the questions if more comments in there if you have. People are saying, of course, shout out to Dr. Larry Little. See that in the chat. People are agreeing about the part that disconnects us. Oh, someone said this: parents are tired and working, trying to make it. Unfortunately, parents aren't teaching. Let's talk about that real quick, because it is what it is, right? Like, I know that we are the most traumatized, we are the most, overworked, and sometimes that has effects on what we can do with our children beyond what the classroom is doing. So let's just break that down real quick so we don't leave that stone unturned. I want to start with you, Brother Cruz.
Okay, and I see my sister posted that question there. But I think I'm gonna just take it to hip hop, man. You gotta show and prove as parents. I mean, you don't necessarily need to know what's in the book. You don't have to teach what's in the book all the time. That might not be your thing, but what you model your children day to day will benefit them, and they will emulate that. So if you're out partying, turning up all the time, that's what your kids are probably going to wind up doing. I was fortunate. I saw my parents go to work every day. I had to get myself ready for school a lot of times because they were both going to work by the time it was time for me to go to school. So I had to learn independence that way. But, you know, and my dad, oh my God, again, he couldn't go and teach me what, you know, or reaffirm what the teacher was teaching me in class in the books. But my dad was teaching me how to work on the car, how to do stuff in the yard. And his process was he'll let me tag along when I was little. Then when I got a little bit older, he'll let me help him. Then when I got old enough, a little bit older, he'll watch me do it. And then when I got a little bit older, and this was the game for him, I'll just do it. And then he'll be like, all right, he'll look behind me. But eventually, by the time I got to high school, no, he wasn't able to go and reteach me or help me learn the things that were in the book. Now he disciplined me. So he knew what I had to learn, and he made sure I did what I was supposed to do. But he taught me skills that gave me confidence in my learning ability, and also taught me how to learn and held me accountable. So you can do things other than just, teaching people, reading a book and stuff to them, even though reading the book is very, very helpful. But as parents, you really show and prove. You show your kids, teach your kids the things that you know, and just be consistent. And that discipline takes effort. But once you discipline your children in a proper way and you're consistent with them and you explain to them the rationale behind it, that's a big lesson to where they can learn that self-discipline to where they can go and be productive students in the classroom and in life. So, education is more than just books. It's a lot to life.
If I may piggyback on Brother Cruz's point as well, he put a comment in the chat that said, get your passports and travel, right? And some of us, may not be able to travel outside those lines, but like I said, travel to Greensboro, travel to your local communities around. There's a lot of rich history just around it. And to Brother Cruz's point, you don't necessarily have to read out of a book. Sometimes it's a show and tell, right? Have your kids ever been to the zoo, right? Have y'all ever gone to, those paint and escape type of ordeals, allowing life to be the lesson. And, for my parents out there that are tired as well, hey, vacate, with your kids as well, like literally take them with you to go and learn new and different places and or things as well, because they're with you, right? So, if you want to go, to the lily pad, outfit, take them with you. So y'all take some fun photos and pictures and stuff like that, and just relax and let your hair down. Everything doesn't have to be always academic as well. We tend to, eat at the same places all the time as well. Go and try them other restaurants on the other side of town as well. Interact with the people that are around there. If you like, music, take them to the vinyl record store. It's so many different types of things you can explore in your community that you can use as a teaching tool without having to teach.
Y'all teaching tonight. Y'all teaching. Doc, go ahead. You got one more thing to add?
Yeah, just parenting is not easy, man. Let's put that out there. Parenting is not easy. I come from a single parent household with my mom, and I split my time between my mom and my grandmother. And I was a very interesting child, very intelligent and bright, but I got into trouble, real trouble. Once again, for another discussion. But when I eventually got, like, throughout college, and when I got married, I always said if I was ever blessed to be a father, not a dad, a father, if I ever had the opportunity to be a father, I would do it. I would be that dad. Well, I still said dad too, but you know what I mean. I would be that guy, and so I have two sons. My oldest probably got the brunt of my wrath because I always said I'm never gonna be like my mama. My mama was, God bless her soul, man. She was tough, 4 foot nothing but tough, and we grew up in the crack epidemic in public housing in Brooklyn. And it was a wild time, man. Like I said, for another discussion. And I always said, I'm never gonna be like my mom, because she, she really physically like disciplined me, man. Like, and so but my oldest got that. So he got the wrath because he was always challenging me or doing something stupid. So then my youngest, who always saw when he was born and old enough to see, then he was like, man, I don't want to be like that guy. I'm gonna be better than my brother. So, and I did it, and I parented brother better. So then to the sister, I think it was your sister, Marquise, that said people are tired. So being a parent is difficult. The reason why I opened up with that, because we were blessed. I'm married. I have my partner. So, my wife, like, we bump for each other. But there was periods where she had to do a lot of things for Dolo because I was finishing up my doctorate. I was working for the feds. I was always out of the house. And then, I was hanging out a little bit. That's a whole other discussion for another day. So, I challenged, and she, as most Black women do, she did her thing. But then when she ended up going to school and then getting her credentials and her doctorate, then I was like, now it's your time to shine, baby girl. I got you. And then I did the running around with the boys or whatever. And I think teamwork, I just kind of sound cliche, teamwork makes the dream work. Even if you're a single parent, right? You got to lean on your village. And everybody doesn't always have it, but there's always people, I believe in positive energy. Me and Shah talk about this all the time. If you ain't developing, if you're in my circle and if you're not helping me grow intellectually or monetarily, or like, if you just want to hang out with me, I'm not 20 anymore. I don't need you just to hang out with me. It has to be very purposeful. And equally, if I'm with you, it's because I feel like I have a relationship with you, that either I can give you some sage wisdom, maybe I can invest potentially in one of your projects. I don't believe in wasted energy. I lived in Korea for some time teaching over there at one of the universities, and they don't believe in wasted energy. Everything is purposeful. Everything they do, from how they eat to how they engage. And when I came back, I was at light, like, oh, snaps. Like, we doing this all wrong. Like, we're just opening ourselves up to everybody and not getting anything in return. And and people are like, man, that sounds selfish. Yep. Because the reality of it is we've given away much less for free. So it's like, for me, I just think as parents, we got to model what we, you could tell your kids all the time to do something, but if they see you doing something else and it's not consistent, they're going to watch the behavior. It's not necessarily the words, definitely not younger. So we got to model what we say. It's like, a parent telling the kid, you shouldn't smoke like tobacco, like cigarettes. You shouldn't smoke, you shouldn't drink. But then they see you smoking and drinking all the time. But they're like, damn, daddy still smoke and drink. They're going to look at what you do. Or sadly, you telling your son that you shouldn't hit on women, but you're abusing his mama. They're going to watch that. So for me is, for my parents out there, give yourself some grace. Let's start with that. Because this is not easy. And I told my wife this last night. If she was here, she could tell you. They were talking about the internet. They had all these tech guys, I guess, in Capitol Hill. And I told my wife, I'm so glad my sons are young adults now. I can't imagine having younger children with this bombardment of all of this stuff. It's frightening. It's, you got kids committing suicide because somebody's acting like they're a kid and teasing them and asking for pictures and naked picture. Like, I'm so glad that my kids are older now, so I yield back. But for my parents out there, man, or anybody, guardians who are responsible for young people, give yourself some grace. Find yourself a village that can support you so that you can help, mold your young people in a manner that's going to help them grow, because we already know that, we already know what society's waiting for. So we got to protect our youngins, man. So I yield.
And I really, really hate to bring this thing to a close. And this last question is not going to close out this conversation. This is the conversation opener. You're supposed to let this fuel you from February 1 all the way through the end of the month and beyond. And I think we can't close without addressing this last statement around the vote. After the vote in particular, when we have done our thing, when we have educated ourselves on whatever the issues, and I'll say this too, there are 23 23 different offices on the ballot this year. 23. Even the smartest person in the world won't have the time to unpack each and every single person on the ballot and what they do, which is why I love voting, because it's the great equalizer. Regardless if you're rich or poor, you probably have the same political understanding and you have the same playing field. And more importantly, you have the same one vote. And in unison is where we get the real power. Oftentimes people talk about this house slave versus field slave mentality. Again, when we unlearn and relearn what really happened, the house slave and the field slave were working together. You didn't know what time to escape if there wasn't somebody in that house knowing that they were getting drunk, or knowing what night there was a party, or knowing what night they were going to be out of town. So it was never this either or philosophy. It's just been adapted in this kind of Willie Lynch model to have us pitted against each other. But that's for another conversation. My last question: what after the vote? What is it after the vote? And how do we make sure that what we put on our agenda, either our personal agenda, our local agenda, the overall Black agenda, and there is a Black agenda. If you got to ask what's the Black agenda, then you're not reading the book. You're not on the same page. We done talked about the Black agenda all day today, but after you vote, after you have this agenda, how do we make sure it's successful on the ballot and after the election? What do we have to do to really realize that? I know it's not just about voting, because it's about democracy. Voting is one part of it. Dr. Jack, your hands up. You take us there.
We have to hold them to task, period. We have to hold our politicians to task. Black, white, green, I don't care who it is, we have to hold them to task. The way these individuals are holding that other guy I said earlier to task to make sure legislation is, look what, 50 years, this joker gets into office, and he ran on what he said he was going to promise that community, overturned. We have to hold our representatives to task. We are too, nicey with them. Nah, that time has come and gone, man. If we're voting for you, show me the money. Show me what you're doing for our, case in point, we're in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Winston-Salem State is in East Winston, North Carolina. East Winston has one of the lowest social mobility rates in the country, not the state, in the country. So that tells me, what are we doing? They're building up downtown. For those of you familiar with Winston, Innovation Quarter, they're spending all this money on downtown, which by Winston-Salem, you can see it. So that's prime real estate. So we talk about gentrification. I don't want to go down, because that's a whole nother discussion. Hold them to task. Somebody said, it might have been Marquise or somebody, they got emails, they got phones, call them, email them, mobilize, go to their offices. When they do their little town halls, hold them to task. Because my thing is, you want my vote, you're going to have to show me how it's not going to benefit me, because I'm okay for the most part. I want to know how you're going to benefit my community and the children after me. Because as I said earlier, they plan this out decades in advance. 10, 20, 30 years in advance, they strategize how they want a community to look. So hold them to task. That's all. Y'all done got me sweating up in here. Hold them to task. That's what we do after. If I vote for you, I'm going to be annoying. I'm going to be in your DMs. I'm going to be everywhere. Like Representative, so this Jack Moda, then I use my doctor. I don't use that doctor stuff outside of school. That's for class. But then, this is Dr. Monell. I voted for you. What you doing? Period. And then I throw my little New York joint in there. Let them know I'm not about, don't let the soup fool you. All right, I'm shut up, y'all. Yeah.
Perfect. Leader Cruz.
Nah, the good doctor said it perfectly. If you sit around and you try to go protest a politician that's not from your district, they literally don't have a reason to care about what you're talking about. The people that you do go and talk to and push are the people that you voted for, or the people that you're in their district, because they need you to get back into that job. So no matter what, we fuss about a lot of politicians spending time raising money and trying to get reelected. If you're pushing the politicians that show up on your ballot, they need you to get reelected. And if you have that people power behind you to where you have a community, you have your organizations, and you all are making a concerted effort to push them to do what they said they were going to do, they have to listen to you or they won't get reelected. So yeah, the doc's right on point with that. You can't be lazy and think it's set and forget. You got to push people, hold them accountable to what they said, but at the same time, make sure that they're using the resources that have been granted to them in that position to benefit their communities. Because like, especially when it comes to your House, U.S. House representatives or Senate representatives, they got field offices. And those field offices should be experts on the federal funding that's in your area. And you should be able to reach out to them like, hey, I saw this kind of grant, or I got this idea, what's available for it? And they should have competent people in place to be able to provide you some assistance. And if they're not doing it, they're not doing their job. So, you got to go to the people that you elected to instead of focusing on the media divide and conquer tactic of these bigger issues that get you mad at people who don't have an effect on what you're actually dealing with. You need to push the people that you put in that place and make sure they use the levers that you gave them to help your own community. So yeah, I'm right with the doc on that one.
All right, Rashad Little, take us home.
Man, I don't have anything else to say. Just know that delayed does not mean denied. That means, honestly, what Doc is saying, be in it for the long haul, right? It take 30 years to make one step, right? So the thing is that, to Doc's point, political agendas are long battles, right? To win the war, okay? In this country, especially because to Doc's point, not only are they mobilizing 10 years beforehand, they're also putting that moat in with the networking, right? And with who's greasing their pockets as well. You see what I'm saying? All of that goes all together. So again, understand when you vote for somebody, you're voting for a long haul, and you're actually working through them as well, because they're not going to always be appointed to that position all the time as well. So you're working through them, and just know that there's a difference between having a 10-day agenda and a 10-day agenda and having a 100-year agenda.
Mic drops all around. It's been a pleasure. There are many different quotes from Brother Carter G. Woodson that we could use, and we could even have a whole panel just breaking down quote by quote. But one of his best lyrics that I love is when he says, "What we need is not a history of selected races or nations, but the history of the world, void of national bias, race, hate, and religious prejudice." That is literally a page out of the book that we are talking about right now. Why do you need to vote? Because they're trying to deny us of our history. Why do you need to vote? Because they are killing public schools, the number one institution that has moved us from impoverished situations to situations of success. Why do we need to vote? Because they are literally criminalizing Black men's actions every single day. Whether you're buying a cigarette on the street or whether you are just going to your home. If you live in the wrong neighborhood or if you make the wrong turn, you face the exact same fate. And it's until we understand that our fates, the fate of Black men, the fate of Black women, the fate of Black people across this continent are uniquely intertwined with each other. Until we really realize that, we're not going to make it. But once we do realize that, we have harnessed the true power. And all we got to do is continue to exercise this voting muscle. A lot of us in this social media kind of genre really feel like we need this right now. We want to put it out there and we want to stand on what we said. It's not about what you said. It's about what the collective is doing. And until we really get into that frame of mind, then one person's vote is not going to make a difference. But if 4 Black men are on one accord, if 4 Black women are on one accord, and they create a voting accord, imagine what we can break down. It's been my pleasure. I look forward, gentlemen, to watching this later on and kind of digesting. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate. And we're going to toss it to the woman with the vision that made this all happen. Shalee, take us to the house.
Everyone, clap it up, clap it up, clap it up for my brothers. I am so full. I'm going to tell you what I appreciate. I appreciate that I get to sit back and just kind of take notes and listen in and not talk. Because I'm just thankful And the reason why I'm thankful, number one, Marcus, thank you for moderating. I already knew you could break it down. I already knew you was gonna come with a Wakanda forever.
Not the Wakanda forever.
But you know, in our private chat, I was like, dang, Marcus, like, you know, them questions were hitting, and it really warmed everybody up. And once it got warmed up, if I could have dropped them emojis with the fire, it just went ablaze. So I want to give a shout out to you all. You are all now seniored into this, so there is no more newbies. Okay, so I want to start off by giving a shout out to one of the cats has been a part of this for a while, Mr. Rashad Little. Thank you so much for being a part of this and always curating conversations within the community. It doesn't stop here. You have made a space, and you continue to make spaces for us to creatively have these conversations. So thank you for that, Dr. Monell. Thank you for doing the same, but inside the classroom. Through your life story, you have created a legacy. And I hope that we continue to hear your story and that you continue to tell your story so we can know that there is a way to get to where you need to get to. And it's just by, you know, every day pushing and making it happen. So thank you. Marquise, shout out to you. I need to, you dropped something about Black Jedi. Z's up. Let's go. You dropped something about, you know, making sure that we reach out and talk to those who have the money and say, hey, I know about the money. So now that I know that, you know, more, I know that, but I didn't really take that into true consideration. We will be talking offline because I know that there are ways in which we could be sponsoring and supporting so much that's happening for me here in Forsyth County. For a lot of our conversations, what's happening in Durham, you know, we're holding this information, but how do we bring the right people? We got Miss Tiffany C. right here on the call. We have Miss Shauna Alexander, who is running for the 4th District. Let me get it right. 4th District Court Judge. And, you know, we got people on this call right now. Dr. Latoya Parker, William Coleman. I mean, the list goes on, that are here listening, and they've stuck through these conversations. So for us to know that there are resources out there that we need to start mobilizing, coming together and having some conversations about how can we come together and make this happen. Let's stop sitting around being cute about the conversations, but actually put some action behind it. So know that I'm ready. I've been ready, and I'm glad that we're about to warm back up with Black Jedi. So let's get it. And I want to say this to everyone that's listening in. We have more conversations that are on the way. Of course, we know March is on the way, and it's Women's History Month. And if you've never been a part of that conversation, we have our Ladies First. And Ladies First is a panel of all females, and it gets down and dirty. I like to have a mixed crowd, but I love to have, you know, like kind of like the cigar lounge with the fellas, and then the ladies, or what do we say, the barbershop talk, and then the ladies in the what we call back in the day in the beauty parlor. Coming together and having these conversations. So look forward to that in March. And I'm going to throw this out to you guys. We got to bring this back around in April. So I'm gonna get back with this panel because we have February the 9th will be the last day for this at this time to register to vote. And then we have our primary early voting happening from February the 15th. To March the 2nd. That'll be our early voting. And we have a site right here on campus in the Anderson Center. And then our day of primary election voting will be on March the 5th. So we got a lot that we need to gear up and get ready for. So after March the 5th, there's going to be some more talk because we're going to know people are in position. Maybe we can bring some other people onto this call to have some conversations about what's next. So as I'm asking what's next, I'm posing this just quick. When I say 15 seconds, I'm gonna say down to 10 seconds. What do you all see? And you guys can drop it in the chat because we're getting ready to wrap this up and get up out of here. But what should be our next conversation in April? Because we're bringing this back around. So what do we see as our next conversation in April? Maybe it's something you need to marinate on, but look,
No, I'm gonna stick to I'm gonna stick to my guns. I would like to talk about how we can get young people involved in the community, because that's kind of work that's going to relate to them and they can see it, and then they can actually not get apathetic about it when they look at those when they look at those bigger issues that don't necessarily affect
I would say that media, communication, social media is the new currency. And we need to learn that, have an intimate relationship with it. And in order to do that, we need to understand our youth very, 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 very well. And you can't do that without, removing your ego though, and stop thinking that you know everything. So I would say that, media, all communication as it relates to the online network is strong. It's not going anywhere. And we need to, develop as a community an intimate relationship on how we move currency through those platforms.
Marcus, Doc?
I just would amplify what Rashad said, but I would even expand it more. Popular culture's influence on politics, staying with the theme, but more so focusing on popular culture, social media, and young people, because that's their lane. And to Rashad's point, people have to be humble and engaging young people. So yeah, popular culture, voting, young people, you'll make it sexy, some sexy title like that.
All right. Last but not least, Marcus.
I would like for a title of April. When I said what I said was wrong. I think that we have a moment of respectability politics that has been perverted. And in certain ways, being an adult is being turned on its head. Being an adult is not, always responding based on emotion or feeling like you're being disrespected. And really, the true adult nature is understanding that what we learned back in kindergarten: sticks and stones may break my bones. And so I think in a real way, I want to break that down and really talk about what that means in this current construct. It's almost like the big gold chains we used to wear so people could see us. Now in that same construct, every single thing has got to have some type of emotional response, or we soft, or we ain't putting it out there. And I think that's what's going to hold us back from creating the unity we need to see. And that's outside of the vote, but that's just me. Okay,
I took my notes. So we will reconvene and come back together for our little pre-meeting before the meeting. And real quick, Ms. Alexander also mentioned that we have our same day registered to vote. And you can change your registration during early voting at the early voting sites. So make sure to know that. Also, Miss Tiffany C. Wright is mentioning our Black Joy Jamboree here at Winston-Salem State. We'll have it on what month is this? February the 19th. Please check out our website, WSSU. You will see all the events that we have going on. And also, let's make sure for our WSSU alumni, Chris Taylor will be is a candidate for the East Ward City Council. So listen, they're on here. We're going to let it be known what's going on. We got two amazing people running for positions. So this shows you how important it is for us to make sure. This is the topic of discussion today, the Black vote. And we are here with the primaries, and we have two people here that are telling us, get out there and vote for me. They have been making big moves in the community already. Now let's see them get to work. So let's make sure that we're doing that. Let me close out by giving a shout out to our contributors and our sponsors. Big shout out to the Winston-Salem State University. And I'm gonna give a shout out to A&T because we got Miss Tiffany C. Wright on the call, and we also have Mr. Marcus. Marcus, I'm giving a shout out because Mr. Marcus Bass, because I've known him since he was a student. Hey, I ain't that old, but I've known you since you was a young cat when you didn't have no locks. Oh, boom. Wait a minute. Shauna said, wait a minute. I'm WSSU graduate. There we go. Okay. And also to Black Voters Matter, Common Cause North Carolina Black Alliance. Again, shout out to Miss Tiffany C. Wright doing big work out there in the city, and to the Winston-Salem Urban League Young Professionals, in which I am the president, and we are doing some work out here. So listen, don't talk about your board. Ain't nothing boring going on. We got the work out here. So again, big claps to the panel. And then we're going to bring on our brother, Mr. Austin Greer, for our next conversation. And so there it is. You know what I'm saying? So I hope everybody has enjoyed. Everybody stayed on for 2 hours. That means something. We said an hour and a half, but you know, we always got to tip the scale on that little 20 minutes to 30 minutes. So thank you guys for sticking in with us. Continue to support what we're doing, and we'll see you in March and then in April. Get out there and vote. Thank you all. Oh, shout out. Mom turned, wait a minute. Today in Aquarius. So if we're going to do that, my birthday is next Wednesday. Hey,
Say we're going to do that birthday shout outs. Come on now.
Rashad, yours just passed, you know.
Yeah.
It's big birthday energy.
It is
All
big
right,
birthday
everybody.
energy. All right.
All right. Enjoy your night. Get home safely. If you are, some of us are still in our offices. And I'll see y'all next time. Thank you so much. Peace.
Peace.